Welcome, everybody, to another episode. In fact, our 10th episode of Banter Saga, our gaming podcast.
I did not know.
Yeah, how does it feel to hit double digits, Tim?
We did it.
That's
Congratulations, us.
Woo.
Feels pretty good, I'm not gonna lie.
Still plugging away with our format. Tim, I know you have been kind of going at the Saga Frontier
Yes.
remake. Are you still chugging away?
I am still chugging away. In fact, I have yet to beat a single story. I'm very close to beating Red's story. But I have been way too busy or just completely drained of life the past few days or so to stream, so I have not continued yet. But once I play next time, I'll be beating that and starting the next one. So we're getting there.
And that's out of how many stories in this game?
There's a total of 8 stories in this game.
Woo!
Yeah,
so
it should go a little quicker once I get further in, though, because I'm going to be using the New Game Plus mechanics, so I won't have to grind every character up every time.
Yeah. Well, is that new for the remake?
It is.
That was nice of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of little quality of life changes that make the game much more forgivable to new people.
It's a little more streamlined. That's good.
Yes.
You love to see it. I just recently completed an interesting little game that I picked up called Strobophagia.
Strobophagia.
Yes, it's a very independent horror game about a party in the woods, a rave, like neon lights and thumping music and just drugs and alcohol. Very interesting. It's got a sort of like millennial, always connected phone mechanic. So you wander the woods and connect your phone to various Wi-Fi hotspots and take part in conversations at those places. Okay. And you get clues on puzzles and where to go next, on like lore in the world. It's actually it's a pretty interesting little mechanic.
Really cool.
It is. It's a very independent, though. What I mean by that is it's pretty short, and it does that thing that independent games do where it only uses an idea once and never expands upon it.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
So there's really only like one solid puzzle in the game, and then the rest is kind of just lore dumps and walking around.
Okay. I mean, I'm always a fan of a lore dump too.
Yeah, it's still super interesting. I can highly recommend it. It's got a great aesthetic, and the soundtrack is a bumpin'.
That's always a big plus.
Yeah, it was pretty great. But for the main event today, Tim, there is something special about a trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, you can have a great one-off story, and if a story gets a sequel, that's great too. But if you can pull a trilogy out of your ass, there's something about that magic number that makes a series or property just feel good.
This is true, especially with movies. Generally, if they're planned as a trilogy, they end up being amazing.
Especially with movies, there are a few movies where a trilogy that got hammered into existence has worked out. But a planned trilogy, oh my god, there's nothing better.
Yeah, it's usually the best way to go. If it's planned, you're in for a good time. Generally, if it's not, you're in for a bad time.
Yeah, there are exceptions, but yes, generally it doesn't always work out. But today, we're going to be talking about gaming trilogies and our favorites within some, well, Tim said restrictive guidelines that I put down.
Yeah, a little bit.
Look, here's the thing. All I wanted to make sure that it was a traditional trilogy, you know, a story in 3 parts. I didn't want just, Tony Hawk 1, 2, and 3 are great games trilogy, boom. I wanted to avoid stuff like that.
Which is fair enough. I can't complain too much. I still got some good stuff.
But he's still got some good ones. So, Tim, why don't you lay down your first trilogy?
All right. Well, first I'm going to lay down an honorable mention to Deponia.
Oh.
Yeah, because that's a really good trilogy of games. Point and click. Really fucking good. Very entertaining. And I'll throw down an honorable mention on that one. But my first trilogy of games that I believe is amazing. I am going to go with Halo 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, so straight in order, right? 1, 2, and 3?
1, 2, and 3, yeah. Technically, so far, I guess technically it takes place in 2 trilogies, the complete story of the game, but the first trilogy is the better of the 2, in my opinion. The story, so basically Halo is just your fucking sci-fi epic with an amazing fucking story. That's the main thing about Halo, is the story is absolutely phenomenal, especially once it really gets going. It takes a minute for things to start unwinding and all the little plot twists to start happening, but once they start going, it is a spacefaring fucking epic, and it's absolutely amazing. Okay. If you're a fan of sci-fi, you're gonna like the story in Halo. Gameplay wise,
when you're talking about the story getting going, are you speaking only within the first game?
So the first game is I would say, so, it's all one continuous narrative, as you would like, David. There's no, it's its own game. It's all one continuous narrative across all of the games. But yes, the first game, you start off with your Master Chief, and you're going to slay you some Covenant bastards because some shit went down, right? But as the game moves forward, you kind of start unraveling these little hints that maybe all is not as it seems, and by the time you get to the end of the first game, you realize that there is another enemy that is actually the real enemy. And then as you go through the second game, that's when you start to the other side starts to get the vibes that, oh shit, maybe we're fighting the wrong people here. And it just goes out of control from there. And then by the time you get to the third one, there's a huge cliffhanger when you meet the Forerunners and all this shit, and shit just gets real fast. And it's one big continuous narrative, and I wish that it didn't end. Or actually, I think the second one's the one that ends with the cliffhanger on the Forerunner, now that I think about it. Pretty sure it's the second one. I don't remember anymore. But either way, it is a spacefaring fucking epic, and yes, it is one continuous narrative throughout all 3 games.
I have limited experience with Halo. I've only played, I think, most of the first one.
Mm-hmm.
I got to, there was a snowy and or ice planet with a lot of bridges you had to keep crossing.
Yeah.
I got to that part, and then I just put it down.
Okay, so you got pretty close. Or no, you got to the library then, right?
With the
flood?
There was the, yeah, I saw the flood.
Okay. So yeah, you were actually pretty close to the end of the game then. Not too far away. Yeah, the first
or no,
one...
I lied. I finished that level I just described. I don't remember the name of it. I just finished that level, and then there was another. The level I got to was I don't want to say tropical, but it was kind of jungly, and there was all these glowing waterfalls.
Okay. Yeah,
you can picture what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I can picture what you're talking about. I don't remember where it takes place in the game exactly, but I know it's all towards the end. If you got to the library with the flood and all that.
Okay, yeah, I did see the flood.
Yeah, the flood is one of the coolest enemies in all of sci-fi. It's just super cool. It's basically just this massive parasite that latches on to life and creates the flood. And the Forerunners, like, you know, the Halo you're trying to turn on in the first game because they think it's going to wipe out the Covenant. Well, actually, the Halo is a massive array, spoiler alert, that is designed to exterminate all life in existence to take out the Flood. But each Halo has DNA stores on it so that it will reseed the planets with the proper species as after the Flood's wiped out. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's like an arc.
Basically, yeah. It's pretty badass. But yeah, the Forerunners had to set that up, and they wiped themselves out in the process. It's just epic as fuck.
Oh,
Yeah. Yes.
yeah.
But
So now-
gameplay-wise, Halo's Halo. You know.
First-person shooter. Yeah.
Yes. Third one needs some work, obviously. Story's still good, but gameplay sucks. But 1 and 2.
So how does Halo handle its gameplay through each chapter or through each game? Does it stick pretty standard to that first person shooter base, or does it add anything through the games?
I believe. I'm trying to remember. Does the third one switch to? I don't remember anymore. The third one might have an option to go third person.
Yeah.
It might. I might be wrong. I'm trying to remember. The third one, I absolutely hated the gameplay, so it's like furthest from my memory. But something about certain weapons makes me think there was a third person option. I could be horribly mistaken here, because like I just remember certain things and they were clunky as fuck. The story was still good, don't get me wrong, but like, yeah, the gameplay of the third game, I just was not a fan. Was not a fan. But
Story-wise, though, it
the
rounds
story is what saves it.
Okay.
I love story, and obviously the music's amazing. I love story. The characters are pretty fucking cool for the most part. But like story-wise, Halo is like probably one of my favorite gaming like narratives, just because the story's a fantasy or a sci-fi epic, and I'm into that.
Nice. And
We don't get enough of those.
It's important to mention that while Halo does have additional games in its series, that did not preclude it from being exempt from the guidelines I sent Tim. So
Yes.
we can pick trilogies that have additional games if we're picking 3 games from the series that all run together.
Right. And to be fair, 1, 2, and 3 are kind of like their own separate trilogy from the other ones anyway, so.
So that with the new ones, I'm assuming Halo, or wait, ODST, maybe?
Oh yeah, ODST, Reach, and is it 5? Yeah,
4?
I guess it'd be 5. I don't know if there is a
So
4.
they
Is
skipped
there a 4?
4?
Yeah, I think
I mean, there is a Halo
ODST
4.
Reach 5, right?
No, there's a Halo 4.
Okay, well then that one's part of that trilogy, I guess.
Because right now, I guess it's like 4, 5, Infinite.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I haven't played the latest one, so I don't know.
I don't know how like ODST and Reach. Well, I know Reach is like a prequel.
Yeah. That's when you
Okay.
start figuring out all kinds of crazy shit. The story of the game's overall, though, phenomenal. If you just play 1, 2, and 3, won't be disappointed, in my opinion.
And if you only played 1, 2, and 3, you wouldn't be missing anything. Like there's no cliffhanger at 3 that like, oh, wait for Halo 4.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I know one of them has a cliffhanger. I thought it was in part 2. I'm pretty sure it's
I
in
know
part
2 2 does have a cliffhanger.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure the cliffhanger I'm remembering is in part 2. But if you play 1, 2, and 3, you basically have a complete story. So,
Nice.
yes.
Nice. All right. Well, much like Tim, my first amazing trilogy does have additional games in its franchise, but 1, 2, and 3 are definitely the cream of the crop within it, because I have chosen God of War.
Oh, okay. I don't know why I didn't think about that being on your list. I should have known.
Oh man, that's okay. So, God of War is actually a really funny trilogy, 1, 2, and 3, because obviously with God of War Ascension, that one came out and wow, is it not good? What a massive disappointment after the main trilogy, because then after God of War Ascension came out, when I was replaying all of the games in the lead up to the 2018 like reboot God of War, holy shit, are 1, 2, and 3 phenomenal.
Okay.
They have it's very much that Back to the Future style of trilogy, where 1 could stand on its own, and then 2 and 3 basically run together. With, I mean, 1's got a little bit of a retcon leading into 2, but you've got, you know, everything flows really well from God of War 1, and then like leads into God of War 2. Kind of. There's a small retcon with the end of God of War 1, but
yeah,
that can be forgiven.
There's nothing wrong with a retcon here and there. You know, it happens. Like, especially if you're trying to tell a story that you haven't completely fleshed out. It's like,
a small one's not going to matter. If, you know, as long as you're not retconning the entire game, you know, that would be a different thing.
It was all a dream. Then part 2 starts.
Boy. God of War 2, the end of that leads direct, like it picks up immediately into God of War 3, and then like God of War 3 just closes everything off. And yeah, there's kind of a cliffhanger, like a post-credit scene that they left open, which does go right into God of War 2018 pretty well, even with a massive time skip. But even outside of the story, just like the continuity between all 3 games in both the story and gameplay wise is something that I admire from Sony Santa Monica, because you have the Blades of Chaos in God of War 1, and then at the end of the game you lose them and you get Athena's blades, and then you're using Athena's blades in God of War 2, and at the beginning of God of War 3 you still have Athena's blades, and then you lose those and you get the Blades of Exile. Just they really paid attention to the little details between each game in both story and gameplay, which I think is really cool. You know, they cared enough to carry things over, which is even more impressive in God of War 3, because when you have the Blades of Athena, you keep the L1 specials that they had, and then you get the new and improved L1 specials when you get the Blades of Exile. So they thought enough about keeping the specials the same, they just give the Blades of Athena new specials for the new game. And I appreciate stuff like that, because I'm big on continuity. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, continuity is always nice between stuff like that, so definitely not an issue there. Horrible disappointment to you, I know, David. I've actually never beaten the first game.
The first game, really?
I've never beaten. I don't know what it is about God of War. I have never been able to sit down and just play through them, and I have not even beaten the first game.
But you finished 3.
No.
You've not finished any of them.
I have not played any of them except 1, and I have not beaten it.
Oh my god.
I know. I own all of them. I own every one of them.
Holy cow. I mean, I guess I can't complain too hard, because I haven't beaten Halo 1 and I've never played 2 and 3.
Well, yeah, that's fair. Well, you never had an Xbox either.
That's true. Well, and I have the collection on PC when it got the remastered.
Oh yeah, that's fair.
Thing,
yeah.
So I own them. But yeah, even like I know we talked a little bit about Halo kind of just being a first-person shooter all the way through, but I really like that they slowly, very slowly, because it's essentially the same game, but they slowly refined the God of War formula through the 3 games, where in the first game, when you're using your magic attacks, you have to stand still in order to use them.
Mm-hmm.
And then in God of War 2, they actually give you the ability to walk around slower, but you can still move and use your magic attacks.
That's usually
and then in God of War,
nice addition.
In God of War 3, the specific magic attacks are tied to the weapon that you choose, because you get different weapons in God of War 3. and then you have an additional meter, a new third meter, specifically for items that they give you, and you can combine them all into combos. So there's actually, you like say you're using one of the blades, you can L1X into, you cycle into the next weapon and keep your combo. So as long as you have magic meter, you can be attacking, fire off one magic attack, L1X into the next weapon and attack with that and fire off another magic attack. It's just, by the time you get to God of War 3, it's the God of War gameplay just perfected. It was so good.
Very nice. It's like the exact opposite of what they did with Halo. By the time you get to 3, you're like, what did you do? Why?
You broke it! Why is it all broken?
Yeah.
And then God of War Ascension came out, and they just like took that perfection. And was like, yeah, let's try something else. It's like, no, you idiots! build upon that, you fucking assholes.
I will say, based on my limited experience with the game, the first one, the story seems absolutely phenomenal. So I cannot disagree with that.
It is.
And I do enjoy the gameplay.
People give Kratos a lot of shit for just being a rage monster.
Yeah.
And I don't agree with that. There is a little, even if it's very little, there is a little nuance to his character. But at the same time, who doesn't love just beating the shit out of everything?
I mean, yeah. That's 100% fair. It's always nice to feel like a badass.
You get a little bit of character nuance, and I can sort of understand the criticisms against it, but look, man, I just want to murder the gods and beat the shit out of everything that walks into my path. Why is that so bad?
Oh, Christ.
Great trilogy, though. Highly recommended. We're going to have to, me and you're going to have to finish God of War, and I'm going to have to finish Halo.
I'll get on it, I promise. Okay.
Eventually. We have a bit of a back catalog, but...
Yes.
Number 2, Tim. Your middle trilogy, which typically is the disappointment of trilogies. I'm not saying you have picked a disappointment. I'm just saying you know how the middle of a trilogy goes.
Yeah. I tried my best to pick 3 that I very much enjoy this time. So I am going to say my second trilogy for this particular episode is going to be, and I was going to be an asshole about this, but I'm not going to anymore. I was going to pick Warcraft 2, 3, and World of Warcraft. But I decided to go the easy route and just go with Warcraft 1, 2, and 3.
Okay. Now these are the turn-based, not turn-based, the RTS
Strategy.
Warcrafts, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
They are RTS games, probably the best RTS games ever created.
Really?
One could argue Command and Conquer is pretty fucking good, but
I was gonna say
Command and Conquer. Oh, go on.
I wasn't gonna bring up Command and Conquer. I was gonna say, because when someone is talking about RTS, I mean, there are obviously a lot of RTS games, but when someone mentions RTS, like the poster child that pops into my head anyway is StarCraft.
Yeah. Which, you could make that argument, but
you're
StarCraft
saying
is never going to be as good as Warcraft. No.
Okay, there it is. You're telling me that StarCraft is not as good as Warcraft.
No. StarCraft's story is really good, because, it's a sci-fi story, once again. But my second trilogy here is a fantasy epic. With some spacefaring stuff when you get into World of Warcraft. And yes, it is one continuous narrative into World of Warcraft, believe it or not. Okay.
So all of the three Warcraft games don't just take place within the world; they are events leading into World of Warcraft.
Yep, everything.
See, I didn't know that.
100% is like one big narrative. World of Warcraft fleshed out some before time things and added, all the space stuff basically. The space stuff is present in 1, 2, and 3. That's all, additions later on. But that goes to prequels and blah, blah, blah. But Warcraft 1, 2, and 3 we're going with here. So basically, this is in my opinion, the RTS of RTS. It's the best. 3 especially, because 3, typically with RTS games, you have, just a bunch of units that you can create, and you kind of, send them out there, and usually each unit kind of has a counterplay depending on what you do, but if you make enough of the big strong unit, you can just throw 100 of them at whatever and it'll eventually break through and you win. Warcraft
Right.
3 takes things a step further, though, because you have the typical RTS kind of thing with, all your units, but you also get a hero unit, which is basically one of the main characters in the stories. And you can level up this character and have special abilities and all kinds of stuff. And you can pick up items for him to power him up. And it kind of becomes like an RPG with that character, but it's still an RTS 100%. But like you can basically take that hero and just whoop some ass. It's pretty great.
I mean, obviously you can level them up and give them abilities and stuff like that. Can you, other than just like telling them where to go, can you jump in and directly control that? Can you like play as that character?
Yeah, you always control that character at all times. You don't have to use them if you don't want to. Generally speaking, some missions are basically just the hero unit, but you generally, if you're in like a big mission, you don't have to use them. Like you can just use your regular units if you want to make things more challenging on yourself, which is nice.
Will they do things on their own if you're not being them?
No, they'll just go stand where you tell them to stand.
Oh, okay. So they'll just I gotcha.
Yeah. You 100% control them. And then obviously the narrative is where Warcraft is just absolutely fucking amazing, and all the characters are phenomenal, and anyone who disagrees is wrong. Oh my god. Gotta tell you. I went from sci-fi epic to probably my favorite fantasy epic as far as games go anyway. There's, it's not the Wheel of Time, don't get me wrong, but Warcraft is definitely one of my favorite fantasy stories out there. And if you don't know it, even just reading about the lore is very fucking interesting. So there's that for you. But I would say, go on.
That's something I don't really hear about. Everyone is always going on and on about Warcraft 3. I mean, even before the remake Blizzard did, they're like, oh, Warcraft 3. I don't really hear a lot of people talking about 1 and 2.
Yeah, that's because like 2 kind of put the franchise on the map, I would say. But 1 and 2 were like early 90s. So they're very, very dated compared to 3.
Oh, I see.
Like extremely dated. So yeah, you can probably actually look up a playthrough on YouTube. That's probably less than an hour, because like they're not huge games in any way, shape, or form. And like I believe the first game, if I remember, it might be the second game too. All the narrative is basically told through like these little weird kind of like one screen like art boxes that have like scrolling text across them. And then there's voiced characters throughout and stuff like that. But for the most part, the narrative of the first 2 games is kind of driven through those little text art pieces.
Okay.
Yeah. It's pretty badass though. I honestly would recommend Warcraft to anyone. If you're a fan of RTS games, will not be disappointed. And I would say the first 2 are definitely a step down from StarCraft. I'll give it that. StarCraft has definitely got the win on the first 2 games. But compared to 3, I think StarCraft is missing something personally. Yes.
Interesting.
Even though I love StarCraft, I do.
Which
Yes.
Only got 2 games, right? There's no such thing as StarCraft 3, I think.
There is not a StarCraft 3 yet. There might be one day, but Blizzard's leaning pretty heavy into Warcraft these days, so I don't know when that may or may not happen, but I would assume there's going to be a StarCraft 3 eventually, because it's still a huge game for like Major League Gaming and stuff.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Got to get that
Very
CPM up and click around like I don't know if you've ever, just as a side here, I don't know if you've ever watched like a pro play that game. It is the worst thing on earth to watch. Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people would disagree with me, but
massive
like
blur.
It's basically like they just are fucking whacking keys the entire time, and the screen's just shooting all over the goddamn place, and they're just dragging boxes around and like throwing shit everywhere. It's insane
Can't
to
follow
watch.
anything.
Yeah, like if I was a great player, I'm sure I'd be able to follow it better, but I'm like an average player, and like it just looks awful. And I would never want to be that good at the game ever because it just looks so mechanical and hate it.
That's what, yeah, I definitely get that feeling a lot with, I mean, even some esports where it's like everything just becomes who can do the thing better instead of who's having fun at playing this game.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. There's a point where you got to keep fun in there. We're kind of getting off track here, but we'll
keep fun. Maybe another episode. Maybe we'll talk about esports, but
yes,
for now,
possibly one day. I will say World of Warcraft, phenomenal game. I just gotta throw that out there because I absolutely love it, and it is a continuation. It's a direct continuation from Warcraft 3,
nice.
as far as the story goes, for the most part.
Very cool.
If I remember correctly,
Okay.
I don't remember anymore, but yeah, it is a continuation of the story. It's amazing.
My next trilogy is a bit of an oddball because it is a hidden object game, which means it is on my list for one reason only, Tim, your favorite thing.
Oh yeah.
Lore.
Fantastic.
It is fantastic. I'm talking about Enigmatus.
Okay.
A hidden object game from Artifex Mundi. The lore of this trilogy absolutely took me by surprise. I was not expecting a story so interesting from a hidden object game.
I came to Maple Creek in search of a missing girl.
So you start off, it's very much one leads into the other. The events of one lead into, there's small time gaps, but the events of one lead into two leads into three is the conclusion. It finishes this trilogy off. So you play as a detective who in the first game is looking for a missing person, and you're going around this town trying to find them, and slowly you start to unravel your antagonist, only known as the Preacher. And you hear all these strange stories about the things he's doing to his congregation in this small town. And like, okay, he's probably just some wackadoo whatever. The very end of the game, motherfucker is supernatural.
Oh fuck.
And that's pretty much where the game ends. Like, the game ends at this point with you vowing retribution against this Preacher. So 2 is where the lore really takes off. So you're following, you track this guy down, and you get sidetracked by this accident on the side of the road. And you think this is going to be just a new adventure. Maybe you'll pick up a couple of clues and continue on with another game. No, this game is directly involved with the events of the first one, and it unravels slowly over the course of the entire game. And this is where you learn why this lore is so interesting, because there is, or I should say there was, a group of people called the Reapers, and they worshipped a demon called Asmodai. And he was smote by the Archangel Gabriel. But before he died, he did some demon stuff to his soul. I don't exactly remember. But the important thing is, all of his followers are trying to Highlander each other in order to become his new vessel.
Okay.
So they're all going around killing each other until one remains to be the new vessel for Asmodai. And the Preacher is one of these Reapers. The other one owns this like amusement park, which is where the car crash was, and that's how everything ties together. But at the end of this one, the preacher kills the other guy who has a giant pet smoke raven, which is really cool, but doesn't really matter all that much. And then the Reaper is on the run, and you gotta hunt him down. Again, he gets away. So then in the third game, the conclusion, you come across this ancient Tibetan village who has been charged with protecting the last remnants of the Archangel Gabriel so that he may once again smote Asmodai when the time comes. Which, of course, throughout the events of the game, you become like a servant of Gabriel and awaken him, and there's a big showdown between the demon and the angel, and good prevails over evil once again. But just holy crap, the depth and complexity of this lore within this stupid hidden object game absolutely blew me away. I have been looking for another game to be this good ever since, which I think is really funny because this was some of the first like hidden object Artifex Mundi games I played.
Yeah.
And in all of my pursuits, Artifex Mundi or even some other publisher, some other developers that they've published, nothing has even come close to being as good as these three games have been.
I have a very limited experience with this game that I played with Chad, but I cannot believe how insane the lore gets considering what I played.
Yeah, it goes absolutely, and it starts in, like, one is basically just kind of an introduction. Like, you know, you are this detective, and you're just kind of, like, peering into this world, and then it just goes off the fucking rails, and it's so good.
I'm always a big fan of something that just completely runs itself off the rails. I'm a huge fan. So
yeah, I know I kind of just went over everything with you, but seriously, play these three games. It's just such a treat to experience this world, and like it's just a hidden object game. You can beat it in like an hour and a half. It's so good. Yeah,
maybe once I get settled in here, I can talk Chad into playing through them as like the first videos on the new channel.
Yeah. It is seriously, they instantly became some of my favorites, and I've been trying to chase that high ever since.
I can think of one game that is pretty good that might not have that same itch, but is also a very lower intensive, cool game in that kind of same vein. It's not quite the same vein, but it's a puzzle game, and those are the Room games. Yeah.
Oh yes, The Room.
Yes.
Also highly recommended.
Yeah, honorable mention.
Honorable mention. Even though there's like 5 of them, and they're all just fantastic.
Yeah, but it's a continuous narrative, so
it is. Well,
yes,
kind of. 1, 2, and 3 definitely are, and then 4 and VR are definitely just like within the same world. There's a couple of ties, but
I would have chosen 1, 2, and 3 if I was going to put them on this list.
Yeah,
I did not
1, 2, and
choose
3.
those. I was torn.
1, 2, and 3 were really good. Speaking of choosing, Tim.
Yes.
Your conclusion.
Yes.
What trilogy have you chosen to end your trilogy?
Well, only the most obvious trilogy of them all, based on things I've said in the past, and that trilogy is, of course, Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3.
The originals.
The originals.
I would really like them to redo 1 in 2 and 3 style.
Oh, I would love that.
2 and 3 were really fucking good.
Yeah, if they redid 1 and Code Veronica and 5 and 6 and 4 in that manner, I would play them all forever, and I would love Capcom for the rest of my life. Capcom, so do that, please. Just remake every game, and you can keep making your other trilogy here.
But yeah, this is a choice of yours I am actually familiar with.
Yes. So Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3. So these actually are the most, like, the entire series is one continuous narrative throughout, but 1, 2, and 3 are probably the most closely related of the games. I guess one could argue that Resident Evil 0 fits in there too, but we're not going to talk about that one. I do like that one, don't get me wrong. I like them all, for the most part. But 1, 2, and 3 are probably the most closely related of the franchise overall. Because, like, so 1 starts off where you got, you know, all your stars boys are heading in to check out some shit at the Berkeley Mansion without knowing that it's actually a setup by a traitor within their midst, right? And basically the first game, you can choose either Jill Valentine or our boy, the indomitable badass, Chris Redfield. All right?
Hell yeah.
And depending on which character you choose, the game actually does differ a bit because, like, Jill gets a lockpick, so she gets access to certain things that Chris does not. And then Chris has a lighter, which makes certain things easier for him to access.
So it's not,
I guess Chris is a smoker.
I've never played the originals. I've only played like the remake ones. So
Yeah.
it's not that Jill has access to the lockpick areas early. Chris can't get to the lockpick areas.
As far as I remember, Chris does not have access to the lockpick at all. So that means
Okay.
that he can't just pick locks, whereas Jill can.
So there are different paths.
Yes.
Okay, that's cool.
It's slightly, it's not like amazingly different, but it is slightly different
Right.
depending on which character you choose. And then as you progress through the game, you kind of slowly figure out that your boy Wesker is actually a fucking cunt. All right? And he's basically set you up to test, you know, these horrible monsters that him and his corporation are putting together. And he releases the tyrant monster on you, and then it begins the very enjoyable thing that happens in every Resident Evil up until 7, where you shoot things in the face with a rocket launcher at the end of every game. Yes. 7 is the first one to deviate from that, which, while disappointing, it's okay. I get it. Okay. That is
Can't
the first one to deviate, though.
I'm gonna tell you, during that one boss fight, a rocket launcher would have definitely been helpful.
Yeah. We then move on to part 2. After all this happens, basically you find out that certain parties within the city were actually privy to what was going on, and essentially they're trying to shut down the STARS program from within because the STARS people knows what's going on, so basically they're scapegoating them and basically getting rid of them. This part of the story has more to do with part 3, which technically speaking takes place at the same time as part 2, but part 3
Yes.
actually starts before part 2 and ends during part 2.
Oh, okay.
Yes. But essentially, we'll just go into the 3 part. They're trying to get rid of the STARS people, and Umbrella sends in this giant mega monster called Nemesis to kill the remaining members of STARS, most of which were already dead, obviously, from the first game and 0. But but you still got Jill and your boy Brad, and there's a few offshoots that are no longer within the city because they all left because they knew some shit was going down. And then essentially they send in some things to kind of clean up the mess, to kind of keep things quiet. And basically part 3 is Jill versus Nemesis, trying to shut that boy down and also take out Umbrella. But, you know, obviously she's got to escape from the city, and that's the big thing for that one. She's got to get out of that fucking city so she can continue her mission of bringing them down and find Chris, who is also her boy, right? And then you move on to part 2, where you got your boy Leon Kennedy and Claire Redfield, who is Chris' sister, And essentially, this one takes place during the initial outbreak, which starts kind of, sort of, I don't remember anymore. It starts before part 3. So part 3 kind of starts in the middle of this. But, essentially, they're trying to escape from the city that has been overrun by horrible monsters. And, God, I'm like losing my train of thought here. There's a lot of plot here, people. I can't explain the whole thing to you. But essentially, they get to the end and they got to take out William Birkin, who was one of the main scientists who discovered the T virus. And that's one of your main viruses throughout the series. And you get way more viruses as the series goes on. But overall... the gameplay pretty much does not change between 1, 2, and 3. It's the same wonky fucking controls. Plot-wise, most of the plot is told through notes that you find throughout the game, and then there's, you know, obviously little tidbits here and there where characters interact, but a lot of the plot is actually, like, you have to put together the bigger picture by reading all the notes you find scattered around in the games, which I always thought was pretty cool. And then even in the newer games, they actually expand more upon the lore in the remakes that they didn't do quite as well in the original games, which is pretty cool in my opinion.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, actually, trying to be as vague as possible to reduce spoilers for you, but Village,
Yeah.
they drop some names, some
Oh, do they?
classic names. Yes, they do.
Oh man, see, I'm excited. Don't get me wrong. I'm excited for Village. I'm gonna play the fuck
Yeah,
out of it.
it's not like big plot points. They're definitely just lore notes you find, but the names
Yeah.
are in there.
Oh yeah,
and,
I'm ready.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm fucking ready. And like, I'm so excited for that. Like, Resident Evil is by far one of my favorite series of games of all time. Like, it's up there. It's probably
it's
top
so
5
good.
series in my opinion. Maybe top 3. It's really fucking good.
That once you get your hands on Village, we're gonna have to talk about it because it is so good.
Yeah. But Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, I realize I just did kind of a huge lore dump there. But you know, everyone who's listening to this has played Resident Evil at some point. You know how good it is. You know how fun the story is. And you know how ridiculous the story gets. But it's still fun. And all the games, in my opinion, are top notch. Even 5 and 6. 5 is not
Even
a bad
5 and
game.
6.
Yeah, so this thing, right? People always hate on 5, especially 6, but we'll get into 6 in 1 second. But we don't want to go too far off course here. We're just going to do a couple notes here. Part 5 is only bad because they did it with multiplayer in mind, and they gave you an AI companion. Okay.
Right, yep.
If you play it with
Never
other
good.
people, phenomenal game. The only issue with 5 is that the AI is really dumb and will definitely get you killed at least a couple times throughout your playthrough. Okay. That's the only issue with part 5. I don't think the game is bad at all. The story is fantastic, and it just silly as fuck at points, but like, it's a great game. And then 6, if 6 was billed as an action game as opposed to a horror game, I don't think people would have shit on it anywhere near as hard as they did. And the main issue with 6, we could also have done 4, 5, and 6 here because I love them all. But the main issue with 6 is that it's more action oriented as opposed to like the survival horror of the past. So like they went really heavy on just the in your face action, and like the combat system's actually really fucking good.
Oh.
It's just it doesn't feel Resident Evil. And I think that's
Gotcha.
90% of people's problems with it.
Okay. Well, there's one trilogy left. And I don't know if you've realized it yet, but there can only be one choice from me
Well, I can think of 2, but I know what your choice is.
for the final trilogy. That is Batman Arkham series.
That actually was not one of the 2 I was thinking.
Really? What on
I totally
earth?
forgot about that. How did I forget
What
about
could
that?
you have been thinking of, Tim?
I was thinking of Half-Life, and then Crash Bandicoot.
Crash Bandicoot, yes, great pick, but holy cow.
Honorable mention.
Yes, honorable mentions. The Batman Arkham trilogy, specifically Rocksteady's trilogy. I know a lot of people like Origins. That is definitely number 4 in my list. But Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and Arkham Knight, holy shit. These games,
They're really good.
They're literally like once in a generation quality. The fact that Rocksteady just managed to build, and that's what it is too. It's not, they didn't change the formula, they didn't like iterate on it, they just took it, they hit it out of the park the first time and just built upon it each time a new game came out, to the point where in Arkham Knight, like, the majority of things you can do are completely superfluous, but they're all fun as hell, and it just feels like something Batman would be doing in this city. Everything. And people always bitch and moan about the Batmobile, and it's like, shut up, that Batmobile is the coolest fucking Batmobile that has ever been put in the Batman lore. It's so
I can't
good.
even believe that I didn't think of this as being on your list, because like my brain just completely ignored it. Like, this is the game David has like done perfect runs on like 75,000 times just to fill in
true.
every save slot with a perfect game.
Every save slot, every piece of content completed, I've done it. But
Oh my god.
yeah, don't get me wrong. The Half-Life 2 games, solid 3 games. Crash Bandicoot, of course, classic trilogy.
Yep.
But man, the Batman games, and it actually takes a kind of that Half-Life 2 sequel approach, where the Arkham City isn't necessarily a continuation of Arkham Asylum's story,
Right.
but it acknowledges those events and says, okay, that happened, what's next? It doesn't continue from that point, but it says, okay, that story happened, where does that take us? And then
Right.
it tells a new story. And the exact same thing with Arkham Knight. It's like, okay, well, Arkham Knight's a little bit more directly connected because of the storyline with Joker and the Titan formula. But even so, like, you know, those events happened, some time has passed, what's happening with Batman now because of that? It's
Yeah.
not just a direct continuation. And that's actually, I know a lot of trilogies or even sequels don't do that, but that's such a really good way to handle your, not necessarily your story, but like the world that you built with, you know, your movie or game or book even. And I think, you know, when you hear a lot of people, even some directors, be like, oh, I don't do sequels because that story has been told. It's like, okay, that's fine. You still built a world where other stories can exist.
Right.
And I feel like if you're unwilling to go back to that, maybe you're not as good as you think you are.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I mean, I guess in that respect, I would say it depends on how epic the story was. Because, like, Lord of the Rings, I don't think there's other stories to tell.
I mean, I guess that's, I mean, technically there were other stories to tell. It's just they were not as epic.
Yeah.
So that's fair. I mean,
It's
okay,
it's
I
hard
could
to
understand
it's hard
that.
to top that.
You definitely started off on a high point with that one. But okay, anyway, back to Batman. So Arkham Asylum is like really simplistic. You have like 4 moves for the free flow combat, and you can basically only do silent takedowns when you're doing the Predator sections.
Yeah, let me just
And
tell you,
then-
David has mastered the combat in this game to a ridiculous extent.
Yes, I have gotten quite good at the games over the numerous hours I've spent with them. But, and then just immediately in Arkham City, you have so many more options in just those 2 gameplay styles alone. And then completely ignoring the fact that they went to an open world on top of building on this core system that they made for the first game. You know, you have different enemy types that need specific moves to handle. I didn't say specific move. There's a few ways to deal with them, but, you know, they gave you a new move, gave you a new enemy to handle it, and then you have a couple of options on top of that. The Predator sections, you have, you know, you can You don't just have to silent take down people. You can pull people over railings. You can set off traps. You can use their own weapons against them. Which is 100% a Batman thing to do. Holy shit. Like, Batman would be doing that kind of stuff all day.
Yes.
And then in Arkham Knight, and the game doesn't start off this way, but I kid you not, in Arkham Knight, Batman becomes so overpowered that you can take down at least half, if not more, of a room without leaving the spot you start in. It's so good. There's traps in the environment. You have so many gadgets just to like screw with people. Every single thing you have in your little utility belt just becomes a nightmare for anyone who just dared to go against the Dark Knight. And honestly, I know a lot of people complain about games being easy, but that's exactly how Batman needs to be. Like,
Yeah.
You should walk into a room and say, all right, everyone in this room is fucked. Let's go.
Yeah, I think that's actually a very fair assessment. Like, the only time Batman should be having trouble is when he's fighting one of his arch nemesis. Okay.
Yeah. And then that's another thing. Like, a lot of people give the Arkham games a lot of crap for having bad boss fights, and they kind of do. There's a few characters who are just completely wasted within these three games, but they are the only ones who you can't use your gadgets against. You can't go toe to toe with. You got to outsmart them a little bit. You have to read the room more than you would on the normal thing.
Right.
Especially like the Mr. Freeze boss fight.
That's what I was about to say. I've
That-
not played the second or third game yet, and it would probably be on my list as well had I. But because like the first game that I have played, like I've never felt more like Batman in my life.
Yeah, just think about that, right?
amazing.
Think about how much the first game is like, all right, I am Batman. And then the second game, even more so. And then by the time you get to Arkham Knight, you look at those other two games and it's like, I was almost Batman, but now I'm Batman.
But now I am the Dark Knight.
Now. In fact, that was I think right up until the game's release, that was the game's tagline was just be the Batman.
Yeah.
And more truth in advertising has never been spoken. It is
good.
so good. In fact, that's going to be probably another topic we talk about later on down the line, but Batman Arkham Knight was made for me. I feel like, yeah, people can point out flaws and criticisms, and the story does get dragged down a little bit during the back half, but I just don't care. Like, everything else in that game is so good, and it just feels right. Like, when you're going through and doing whatever, like the Riddler challenges, or even the Batmobile, like, there's stealth tank sections with the Batmobile. That's cool as fuck. All right.
Yeah.
if you're one of those people who are bitching and moaning about the stealth tanks, all right, piss off. Nobody cares.
And this is coming from
sections
the
are
guy
so
who
badass.
literally, while this game was broken and unplayable, was still playing this game and talking about how great it was.
I did. I finished it. I finished first playthrough and was working on new game, the new game plus, which it's kind of new game plus. It's basically they just let you keep everything and bump you to the next difficulty automatically. So you don't have a choice but to go to the next difficulty. It's automatic with new game plus. I was working on that second playthrough before they patched it.
Yeah.
On PC, mind you, where the port was an absolute nightmare. I didn't care. Everything about this game, it's like they read my mind and was like, okay, here you go. You can do this, you can do this, you can do this. And I'm like, yeah, all these things, please give me more. And as like, I know I tend to gush about Arkham Knight a little bit, but just the entire trilogy from Asylum, City, and Knight, I might have to delete a save and play them again because holy shit, they just scratch an itch for me. That is so good.
That is the most just luminous fucking like review of a series ever.
It is. I can't if I was working somewhere when these games came out, well, the first two I could probably give fair review scores to. I would have to pass on Arkham Knight. I was like, look, guys, this is a 10. You're not going to allow me to give it a 10. This game is a 10. Give it to somebody else if you don't like that, because this is an 11 out of 10 game. I don't know. Well, actually, while I was playing Resident Evil Village, like the things it was doing, it was scratching that itch. Like I was going through, I was playing it. I was like, this is hitting some spots, yo, that like I haven't been scratched in a while because I finished Arkham Knight so long ago.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I love 7. 7 is a phenomenal game, but I back-to-back. I played Resident Evil 8 twice in a row, back-to-back, the first playthrough and then on New Game Plus, without even thinking about it. And I'm almost done with Mercenaries, and well, Mercenaries is the only extra mode, but I've gotten on the 4, there's only 4 maps, by the way, Tim, it's kind of lame, but
It's fine.
on the 4 main maps, I already have A ranks
Jesus.
on them. And they I think they like knew, because the game, it's actually, I feel like it's longer than 7. I don't know how true that is. There's certainly more. You're going to be playing it for a long time, Tim. There's so much to explore.
Yeah, I've
There's
seen
so
bits
much
and
to
pieces
explore.
here and there, and I know it's going to take me quite a while to beat.
Okay, well, okay, I'm sorry, we got off topic a little bit. We'll talk about itches being scratched on another episode. But we each had 3 fantastic trilogies. Tim, I actually, you didn't really throw any curveballs. I am at least aware of all of the games that you talked about today.
I wasn't going to be throwing any curveballs on this one. I just went with a few trilogies that are close to my heart.
Yeah, and like I said, we can do like a game exchange program. You can finish God of War, and I'll play through the rest of the Halo games.
It's fair enough. It's fair enough, because I do.
In fact,
need to
you know what?
Go through God of War. I do.
I'm not gonna ask you what you're looking forward to, and we won't do it for the next one, but I'll make a promise to everyone out there right now is I'm going to play through the rest of Halo and then finish 2 and 3. That'll be the game I'm looking forward to. And then, Tim, if you can look forward to God of War 2 and 3, we will report back. Yeah. We will report back when we finish those games about how they went for each other.
I'll even beat the first one.
He'll finish the first one. Actually, I think that's kind of funny is you and Chad both turned me on to the first God of War.
I know.
I remember when you shared that when I first got my PlayStation 2 in the house,
Yeah.
which, by the way, very first game system I ever owned. I'm a late bloomer when it comes to video games. But yeah, when we first got the PlayStation 2, Tim and Chad were like, yo, you have to play this game. And I was like, yeah, this is fucking sweet. I can't believe you never finished it.
Yeah, I never finished that one. But yeah, it was one of my favorite games at the time. It was so much fun.
Damn. Anyway, if you liked listening to us ramble on, a little bit more rambly this week than we've been in the past, but if you like listening to us ramble on, let us know in the comments, subscribe to the channel, because this is all we do. You're not going to get any weird offshoots from us like I know some other YouTube channels do, where they reel you in with a good series and then post a bunch of bullshit. And likes and notifications and that other thing that they just added, I think.
Did they add a thing?
I'm actually not sure. I mean, I don't really do. I just watch things on YouTube. I don't interact with anybody. So
It's a fair point.
that I'm just covering my bases in case there is a thing that people always ask you to do.
Okay.
But until next time, we will have something else to talk about gaming related. But until then, we'll see you around.
Good day.